Thank you, everyone, for coming this morning. We've got two great speakers for this session. We're going to lead off with Dr. Kuzma. She is an accomplished enterprise delivery and transformation leader with a passion for connecting strategy to execution and empowering teams to deliver sustainable value. Pretty good. She's a driving force behind agile practices in complex business environments. Currently, she's serving as head of agile practices for S&P Global. Natalia leads innovation initiatives to promote transparency, positive culture, and agile product delivery within the organization. Very good. With over 6 years experience at S&P Global, she has held various leadership positions, including Director of Program Management. Interesting. And Manager of Agile Practices. So with no further ado.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. And we're sorry about some of the technical difficulties we are having right now. So welcome. We are actually assuming that you're interested in flow, right? And improving the flow within your organizations. The title of our presentations is Improving the Flow for Better Business Agility. And we were thinking about what topic to present for the conference, and it just came to our mind that this is something that a lot of people would care about. And this is something that we have really cool use cases that we can show you what we did. And we can really give you some tools and techniques that you can use for your organization. We are going to be talking about two specific use cases. One is around the culture, and second one is around improving the dependency management, so to say, within your organization, and how both of those will impact the flow of value for your organizations. So Leland is having the clicker. He's going to be the one to change the slides for us. If you want to, you can connect with us on LinkedIn. You can see the QR codes in here. We will be showing similar slide at the end of the presentation. So you will be, if you're willing, you will be able to go ahead and connect with us. If you have any questions after the session, please feel free also to reach out to us. There's a Slack channel, I know, but we'll be happy if you will connect with us. So as you had a little bit of the brief introduction about myself, and Leland will speak about him, I'm all about the culture, all about the purpose, all about the empathy, and I am a lifelong learner, as Leland is. So that is the core with us, and this is what we are going to be sharing with you today.
All right, and I'm Leland Newsom. Some of you may know me. I'm actually lead one of the SIGs that Max talked about. I lead the Agile at Scale SIG here for Agile Austin. But I talk a lot about flow. My introduction into Agile was actually Mary and Tom Poppendike's book, the Lean Software Development, an Agile Toolkit. I still have it. I still read it regularly. I refer back to that book a lot. And so things inside of the book like value stream mapping, I still continue to do today, and we'll talk about that a little more. I do talk a lot about feedback loops, the metrics. If you know me and have heard anything around metrics with me, I can talk for hours on that. So we're going to try to stay a little bit away from that. Most of my conference speaking has been around technical practices. That's my background. So I started in software development, and I talked a lot about technical practices. I am also a strong introvert. Getting on stage used to scare me. I was like, it really frightens me. I have anxiety medicine in my bag, but I didn't need it today. So it is a challenge. But I started doing it in 2016. So I've been doing it now for a while, and I'm getting a lot more comfortable with it. I've even spoken at like the global Scrum gathering. And that was probably my largest audience. So this one's pretty good. So that's me. You can connect with me on here. I'm probably easier to reach me on LinkedIn than it is any other method. So that's a good place to start. So when we were talking about this, and talking about flow, and I wanted to pull this back a little bit. I had just read the State of Agile report that comes out every year, 2023. And so I went back 10 years ago and I looked at what was the state of Agile 10 years ago versus what is the state of Agile today, and why are people adopting Agile? And so you can see on the early ones, accelerate time to market. That was a big piece 10 years ago. It's still in the top 3 from last year. Then I started looking a little more and you see better aligned business and IT, and they changed the wording for the one for 2023 to be more about prioritizing and delivering value. And then also predictability started showing up in there. And flow influences those a whole lot. And so that we wanted to tie that back to those. But in 10 years, the top reasons people are adopting Agile, and today the top reasons are still the same. And it's really about that accelerating time to market and moving forward. So we started talking about our flow and how this was going to, and even our flow of the conference, and we only have 45 minutes. So we wanted to not have so many handoffs. And so we started playing with this a little bit. So we'll hop back and forth a little bit, and, but not a whole lot. So we're gonna start in the what is flow. So pretend you're getting on an elevator, CEO gets on it and says, I hear a lot of talk about business agility. What is that? You know, what would be your response? So I put it in ChatGPT and I said, I kind of like their answer. So we're talking about AI, but I did like the part where it says fostering a culture that promotes adaptability, collaboration, and continuous improvement. I would add continuous learning to that list, but I did like that definition. So we're still on the elevator, and he or she has the follow-up question of, well, I hear about flow. Why does that matter? And so again, went to ChatGPT and liked the answer, but you can see what I had underlined around optimizing efficiency and reducing delays, ensuring timely and continuous delivery of value. Again, focus on that accelerating time to market and those kind of things. So great answers in there inside of it. But for me, flow is all about that moving along in a steady pace, moving, you know, having the uninterrupted progress. A lot of things can interrupt the progress. You know, there's many things, and we'll hit a couple today about it. But over time, and especially in large organizations, small things add up quickly and become big blockers to flow. And so we'll kind of go from there. Reasons flow matter, right? And I've kind of hit these, but just for being in the slide, that delivery of value, that accelerating time to market. How do we continue, you know, satisfy our customers through that continuous delivery of valuable software? And so that's really a bit, and it also helps with the improved predictability. So if we have smooth flow, we have less variability, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So we'll move from what is flow to the culture shaping.
Thank you, Leland. So as Leland said a little bit about the introduction about the flow, right? Just to get us all on the same page, we will have 2 case studies, as I said. And the first one, I will be presenting around the culture shaping and what we did specifically for our organization around that, because everything starts with a culture, as you all know. And we did some pretty cool things and we were able to achieve some pretty good results. So the first case study, we called it the culture in improving the flow. What is the role of the culture and how it actually impacts all the results that you have? And interestingly, we actually split this presentation into those 2 case studies, and the results, we also split them into kind of 2 dimensions. One is related to the results we achieved around the culture, like customer satisfaction, employee engagement, alignment. And then some of the metrics, some of the results that were aligned with more reducing the dependency, time to market, and some of the other metrics that we're using. So as you can see here, we'll be starting talking about what is the culture and how it really relates to improving the flow. What is the role of the culture in improving the flow? We talk a little bit about what we did, what were the steps that we took in order to be able to improve the culture, and through improving the culture, really improve that flow of value throughout the organization. Some of the tools and techniques, you may have heard about some of them, you may have experienced or implemented some of them, but these were the things that worked for us. Of course, this is not a comprehensive list. There was a lot more that was put into that. But since we have a limited time today, we needed to really concise and really concentrate on the ones that were the most impactful, right? And as I said, there will be some results that are related to the culture and culture shaping. And in the summary, we'll just summarize everything. What were the learnings for us? Okay, so what is the culture? We all talk about the culture, what it is, what it means for us. And every one of us has something else in our mind when we talk about the culture. But in general, you see couple of keywords here: the shared values, shared beliefs, behaviors, practices. This is something that we all share, right? Specifically for the company, specifically for the organization, they are embedding all of these beliefs into their behavior. So all the employees, leadership, whoever you have within the organization, this is forming your culture. And this is very important, as we will talk about about this on the couple of next slides. This is very important because it affects the way the organization work. It actually drives the way that organization work. And the culture is the fundamental and key point in that. Okay, so a little bit more about the culture. Culture lives between some of the behaviors that we are willing to amplify and some of the behaviors that we're willing to tolerate, right? If we're not willing to tolerate something, it will not really scale to our definition of the culture. This is something that will not be happening within the environment that we're in. So just whenever you think about the culture, this is a great way to really fit those behaviors and those beliefs into the whole concept of the culture itself. Okay. Anybody heard about this saying that the culture eats strategy for breakfast? If you can raise your hand. Yes, yes, I truly believe in that, right? You can have greatest culture, greatest strategy in place. You don't have a great culture, that will not work, right? People drive everything within our organization. No matter what we say, technology is important, everything else is important. But if you have the right mindset of the people, your organization will grow, right? So this is one of the tools, and I know it's not on the tools and techniques section of the slide, but I just wanted to really talk about this when we talk about the culture. Have you heard about the mood elevator before? Okay, so this was a good idea to actually put in here. The mood elevator is really showing our current state of mind. What is our current mindset? How do we show up? Like, how did you show up to this conference? What is in your mind? Are you curious about what's going to be presented? Are you stressed about something? This will actually impact how you're gonna receive the information that you're going to get here. If you come in at least from the curiosity perspective, which is in the middle, you have a chance to use this information for your benefit and for your organization's benefit. But if you're coming from the perspective of stress, judgmental, defensive, it's not going to work out. So you're pretty much wasting your time. So if you can, whenever you go to a meeting, whenever you're going to the conference, any event, at least stop for a second and think, where is my mind? Where is my mood? Am I going to really receive the information that is presented to me? At least from the curiosity perspective. And you can go higher, right? I'm trying to, most of the times, being grateful. That is my mood most of the time. But at least starting somewhere and maybe noticing over time where you tend to go. What is your natural state? And maybe trying to work on that if you don't see it somewhere on the bottom, on the top of the list. Okay. So we're talking about the case study here. And before we get into some of the techniques and tools, we want to talk about what were some of the reasons for us to change, right? When we did a lot of transformations with Leland, agile transformations, flow transformations. What we saw as a common theme across all of them, those were the three reasons people wanted to change something, either being improving the flow or improving anything else that is not maybe not going that well within the organization. It all comes back to the flow all the time. We want to improve the flow within the organization. So we'll talk a little bit about each one of these and how it actually enables the flow of value for the organization. Right? I'm not going to read through this. If you're interested, we will be distributing the deck. You will be able to look through all of these reasons for the acceleration of value. But pretty much making sure that the work that we are doing is visible. So it's transparent. The results are transparent. And a lot of the times within the organizations, it is scary to be transparent. And why is that? Because everybody will see what I'm doing. Changing that mindset to really celebrate what we do and not being afraid to show what we do, because we all do a lot most of the time, right? So alignment. Why is it important to be aligned? Why do we have to keep in mind our goals, the company goals, the initiatives that we are having, the why behind things? Because then we do our job better as developers, as testers, whatever else your role is within the organization. If you know the bigger goal that the organization is trying to achieve, you're going to do better whatever your role is within the organization. So alignment, again, I'm not going to read through this, but alignment is very important. And prioritization. So within some of the organizations we were working with, we had 100 initiatives at the same time that we were working on. And we had, let's say, 150 developers. You can do the math, right? So one of the reasons, again, as I'm saying, was to really look at the prioritization. What are we prioritizing? What has value for us? What will bring the most value to our customers? What will satisfy and exceed their needs? So again, prioritizing and reprioritizing when there is a need for it, when the market conditions change or any other internal opportunity for the reprioritization has to be happening. Okay. So what did we do, right? We talked about this use case and the pilot, and we did this a lot of times. So this is pretty much just the summary of a lot of those flow transformations that we did. We start with leadership team. I know it's kind of a cliche by now, but when you have the buy-in from the leadership team, at least one person, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So really investing that time into coaching your leaders, really getting to know what their pain points are, because if you know their pain points, you'll be really able to come up with the solutions that will work for them, and they will see the value of what you're doing, okay? Creating that culture of constant improvement and really showing the value of the work that you're trying to bring in and the changes that you're trying to introduce, because we all know that the changes are usually hard for people. Building a network of change agents. This is very unique and very important because we'll be talking about the results. You can actually achieve any change within the organization with no matter how many people you have to support you. And how it works? By building that network of change agents. If you're one person that was asked to do a transformation, which I was at some point, I was really struggling to understand how I'm going to do it. It's a huge department. I am the one, just the one person. So I thought about it and I said, okay, let me think if I can get one person from each of the key areas of this specific department and see if I can get their buy-in, right? Maybe they will be working with me and we'll create a team and we'll scale it up. And that actually worked really well. At first, there was a lot of resistance. Why do we have to do it? What are we doing wrong that we need to change? It really didn't work for me to meet with the whole group together. I needed to really divide and conquer, meet with each person individually, identify what their pain points are, identify what their success stories are, what their success criteria are, and then go from there and really train them, coach them, mentor them, until we actually were able to build that network of change agents. And how it works is that when you get those people on your side, so to say, they will start influencing others. And you create another network of change agents and another network of change agents. And you're able to spread your influence across the whole organization. That's how the changes are made. Identifying what the vision is for your transformation, either flow improvement or whatever else you're working on. What is the vision? What are you trying to achieve? Right? And we'll talk about really agreeing on impediments of the way of flow, but what is the vision? What is the future state? We talk about, some of our frameworks talk about the postcard from the future, writing yourself a postcard from the future. What is your vision? How do I see myself, my organization, my department in the future? How does it look like? And success criteria. How are we going to measure success? For us, we talk about the culture here. It was NPS score, Net Promoter Score. are our customers satisfied, better satisfied with our changes than before? For us, it was also employee engagement score. Are people satisfied with all the changes that we're making? Because people create culture. And then creating the pilot, right? Just making sure that we have a specific way to implement whatever flow changes we want to implement. Create a pilot, a small subset of your department or whoever is willing to do that. Sometimes you'll have some volunteers and then the rest will follow because they see some successes. Creating that pilot. And the last step, of course, we are really big at celebrating successes just because we see it working, but really measuring, did we improve? And it's not only I measure now and I measure 6 months from now, continuously measure, continuously inspect and adapt, right? Continuously get that feedback and implement the changes and really course correct, because there's no like a one set path that will get you where you want to be. Okay. So some of the tools and techniques we're using, have you heard about the I do, we do, you do approach? Okay. So when we work with the change agent, and this just warms my heart because we actually will give you something new that you haven't used before. When we were working with our change agents or in any other setting, like for example, a new Scrum Master comes to our team, how we approach the kind of adaptation of that new person or a new role within the organization is we use this I do, we do, you do approach. So at first, you work with somebody, you do it, they observe, they shadow you, they're just there for you, they see how you do things, right? Second step is we do it together. After some time, when you see that the person already got the like theory of it, you can do it together. So maybe co-present, maybe co-facilitate, and have that responsibility shared. And then you do. We allow them to really go ahead and try it out by themselves. We'll be there for them. We'll really support them, provide them everything they need, but they do it by themselves. That's how gradually we get people into our roles within the organization. Okay. COPs, community of practice. Who heard about that? Yay, nice. Okay. So for us, it was a great tool because a lot of people were a new role for them. They haven't done that before. They had no idea how to do some of these things. And being within the group of people that really had some experience on it, it was tremendous, tremendous support for them. So COPs, a community of practice, I saw a lot of hands here, so you know what it means, but it's pretty much a virtual organization that people join when they share some common interest, right? Or within a specific domain usually, right? We have created Scrum Master COP. We have RTE COP because we're following SAFe framework. We have POPM COP, Product Owner, Product Manager COP. We have Dev COP, QA COP. Everything that you can imagine that really has interest and draws the attention or specific subset within your organization. Okay. Hackathons. How many of you do hackathons within your organizations? Some hands, great, great. We do that too. This is amazing, amazing innovation activity. If you haven't done so, at least try to introduce it within the organization. It is an opportunity to share the knowledge. It is an opportunity to really create something incredible that nobody thought about before. And also, it is an opportunity to solve some of the problems that may not be on your roadmap, but they're really important to your customers. So how do we approach the hackathons? We actually ask our customers, what is your problem that we haven't solved before? And we bring it back to the teams and say, pick the one that you want to work on. You have 2 days, come up with an innovative approach or idea how to solve this. And you would be amazed what are the results when people have freedom and they don't have restrictions, right? And interestingly, we have some ideas that went to production after 2 days, after 1 day, because those were impactful results that impacted our customers' lives. So if you haven't done it before, try it. Innovation demo. This is kind of related to the hackathons that we're doing, but every quarter within our organization, we are doing innovation demos to our CTO and the leadership team. And each of the teams that was able to do some innovation activities throughout the quarter, because that's once a quarter we do it, they will come and they will present and they will showcase. And exactly the same thing. If you would see that there's a great idea that was implemented and it solved our customers' needs in some way, it will get into production. So it's not only that we have a roadmap and we have specific value area allocation, maintenance, business, architecture, whatever else. We actually have that space and time for the innovation to be able to keep track with the market, with the changes in this world. Okay. So we talk about some of the metrics and key areas. We're deliberate in not putting the exact metrics that we are using, just because each one of you has something different. Each one of your organizations is really using something else to measure your success. We want to emphasize that it is important to measure, but the way you measure, it's up to you. It's up to your organization. It's up to your leaders, what they care about, right? What are the metrics? But key areas, I'm going to concentrate on top 3, and then Leland will talk about the rest of them a little bit later. But key areas that we're concentrating from our culture perspective was customer satisfaction, right? What is the most important thing for us? Satisfy our customers, along with satisfying our employees, of course. And that's why we have the employee engagement score right there, right? It's hard to fit it on one, but they're probably equally important. You have happy people, you'll have happy customers, right? And alignment. So alignment in our case was really the value area assignment. So making sure that we balance out some new business needs and new business features with technical depth, with maintenance, with architectural work, with enablers. So we want to make sure with some risks, and we are in highly regulated environments. So for us, it's also regulatory requirements and so forth. So just make sure that you identify those metrics that are important to you and that will drive you to where you want to be. Okay. And a little bit about the results that we were able to achieve. Who heard about the NPS? Awesome. Okay, most of you. So NPS is the Net Promoter Score, and we have it internally because we have a lot of internal customers, and we have it externally. And you can see that with all the changes that we're able to implement, we're able to increase our internal NPS score by 15 points and our external NPS score by 2 points. With the changes that we were able to implement from the culture perspective, we were able to achieve the highest employee engagement score for the technology. People are happy, right? Who heard about the term OKRs? Objective key results. Yes, great, awesome. So 95% of our OKRs are on track because we're aligned, because we prioritize, right? Because there is transparency not only to what we do, but also towards what we are trying to achieve. Okay, and 2 more. We were able to do our first 2 hackathons, and we're able to create a new Strongest Link Employee Recognition Award that is doing pretty well. Okay, so who accelerates the flow? People do. It's all about people, right? It's all about people. So make sure that you, if that's the only thing you're going to take out of the culture part of the presentation, people accelerate the flow. Yes. Okay. Moving to Leland.
So we'll move to the team structure, one inside of it. So dependencies. Has anyone ever seen a board like this or worse? I took that picture, by the way, in 2017, and it's not the worst I've ever seen. The worst I don't have the photo. The worst I was in Michigan in November, and we're standing in front of this board that was just full of red yarn, and this lady was standing next to me, and she was like, "Oh wow, I can knit a sweater." She was about 5 foot tall, 100 pounds. And I said, "The problem is you can knit me a sweater," right? I was like, let's work to remove these dependencies and make it where the sweater fits you instead of me. And so in this case, the RTEs, right, the release train engineers, they were no longer the coach of the train. all they did was dependency management. That was their job, dependency management, tracking everything. And so it was quick to change the mindset, quick on our agenda to change the mindset and change the structure to not have a board that looked like this. All of these caused a lot of delays, right? Every feature was going to have to wait for someone to finish something. And so a quick slide about dependencies. There's multiple types, all of those kind of things, but it's really about some of the problems, right? The increasing the risk of being late, the handoffs. We had more handoffs in this presentation, but as we practiced it and other things, we decided to not have as many handoffs and intentionally, just because we only have 45 minutes and we had way more slides than 45 minutes worth when we started. So we've tried to do that. But just as an example, let's say 4 of us are going out for dinner tonight and we're coming from different sides of town. What's the probability we're all going to be there on time and be seated so we can have dinner on time, right? Just mathematically, it's a 1 in 16 chance. 15 out of 16 chances someone will be late if you just do the quick binary. Every time you remove a person, you double your chance of success. This is the theory, right? That you double it, but it works that way in software as well. Every time you remove a dependency, you improve your chance of delivering on time. So why do we have dependencies? Just kind of curious, why do we have dependencies? Anyone? Right. Yeah, working on multiple things, splitting tasks. Architecture. Architecture is a big one. Yeah. Lack of communication. Siloed knowledge. Exactly. So we're going to talk a little bit about siloed knowledge. The others we're not going to talk too much about. But one of the things we do to ourselves is this, the Scrum Guide. This is the latest one, but it talks about typically 10 or fewer people. But still, it says you need the skills necessary to create value, right? And so a lot of talk about the law of small teams. And so a lot of times you can't have all the value on one team if you are very rigid in your approach in doing this. And so going to just talk about some of the data. This data was done 10 years ago. It's talked about at some conferences. I know I've heard Troy McGinnis talk about it. I've heard other people starting to talk about it now. Like Daniel Vacanti even talks about a little bit with larger teams. But the data basically says a team of 5 to 9 people is the most balanced. So, what you've been told, it is the most balanced. It is a little bit higher than the others. But the data also says if you have a team from 9 to 15 and it's serving your needs, no reason to change it, no reason to make it smaller. In fact, it shows, it's over here, that the quality and responsiveness between 5 and 9 and 9 and 15 are about the same. Productivity is a little bit less for the larger team because of things like the communication paths, and I'll hit those in a minute. But predictability is a little bit higher. You don't have to wait for skill sets off of a different team. You're able to do the work yourself. So if predictability is something that you're looking for, and remember the first slide about the State of Agile report, predictability had moved into the top 5. And so if predictability is something you really care about, and it was something we cared about as predictability, because we were never meeting dates. And so we started looking at that. And I'll hit a little on the improvements at the end. Oh, the slide is missing. I think I know what happened. Oh. All right, so I don't know what happened to that slide. There was a slide in here about the communication paths. And so the communication paths, if you have a team of you have, what's the formula, like n times n minus 1 divided by 2. So if you have a 5-person team, you've got 10 communication paths kind of things, right? And so a lot of people are concerned about the number of communication paths. If you have 15 people inside of the room, you have a lot more coordination, a lot more complexity that you're doing to yourself. So you have to be aware of that as you go forward. But in reality, a lot of times in this image over on the right really shows that there's 6 work items on a team of 18. So there's 18 paths. 18 people. It's not 153 paths. It's actually only 18 edges. So even though that team size that did this from the data that's on that link that's there, there were only 18 communication paths done at any time. And so it's really more about the amount of WIP you have that determines how many communication paths than it does more the number of people on the team. So managing WIP is actually one of those key things, but it's not just managing WIP. And so I know we're getting a little short on time. I'll hit some of these quick. So we started looking at it and said, do we have the right people on this train? Do we have the right people on the teams? We did a value stream mapping and said, how does work flow? And we didn't pay attention to current organization structures, those kind of things. We just said, how does work flow from customer request to deliver it to the customer? And we looked at all aspects of that flow, and we started organizing around the flow and said, what skills do we need on this team so they can build everything directly? We had some travelers, even though this was a safe, the shop had adopted safe, we took from less the concept of travelers, where we had someone who had that knowledge and they would embed with the team for a quarter or so, teach them how to do stuff, and then move on to the next team. So those teams could build those skill sets. We used a lot of flow-based metrics. I'll hit those in just a few seconds. We did pay attention a lot to WIP and making sure that we're hitting the WIP. And finally, we're inspecting and adapting along the way. So again, the metrics we were hitting, predictability, stability, making sure that we were doing consistent production, that we weren't having huge spikes up and down, working sustainable paces, and also the responsiveness. Some quick metrics we had: cycle time decreased. It went from 12 days to 7 days. And responsiveness was supposed to stay the same if you went larger. We saw improvement. Productivity stayed roughly the same. What it was before, you would see the spikes. The first week of the 2-week sprint, hardly anything was delivered. The second week, everything was delivered. So you saw this up and down happen. And as we focused on flow and getting more flow and removing those dependencies, it was very consistent week over week. Quality was roughly the same. We did reduce the amount of rework. So the defects found by QA, our production defects stayed about the same though. So that was roughly the same. Predictability is where the big improvement came in. So we increased that from about 50% to about 85% in how we measured our predictability. Business owners started talking about they can trust what we were given. At the start of it, the business owners weren't willing to go out to customers and say, this is what we're delivering. By the end of it, they were willing to say, here's what we're sure about we're going to have. Here's the things that are on the bubble. And so they were a lot more trusting. We were able to use things like the Monte Carlo simulations to actually say how much could get done because we were so consistent. And then sustainable pace. We didn't have that big rush at the end of every sprint to get things done. And this was my slide that I was wondering where it went. This is the connections that you see. It makes nice geographical shapes the bigger the teams get, but that's, so we'll move from case study to closing. I think we got
really quickly, just talking about what we did and what do you do, right? Where do you start and what do you do? So really start with the culture. We're talking about the culture being the foundation. Start with the culture, identify your current culture foundation and see where you want to go from there. Identify the problem to solve and agree on the problem to solve, making sure that you're actually hitting the largest and the most impactful problem. Team structure, make sure that, as Leland was pointing out, if you have any team structure issues that you need to address, that those will be addressed and they will reduce the number of dependencies that you have. Experiment, try something new, see if it works. If it doesn't work, you can always adjust back. Start small and experiment. Okay. Policies, if you have any current policies that are on your way, try to review them, try to see if there's anything that can be done to improve the flow and embed that into your policies, right? And include constant feedback. This is very important to see if you're moving towards the right direction. Identify those key people that you will need to get your feedback from and really work with them and embed their feedback into what you do. Okay, some of the great resources, you can see some of the books here, some of the links. Please feel free to take a look at them when we will be distributing the presentation.
By the way, one book, the project to product mix, was supposed to be on here and didn't make that one, but.
Okay, so we're done. Thank you so much for your time.
I think we do have time for a couple of questions.
Again, just a quick QR code if you would like to do that, and we're happy to take any questions we have here or online.
If I'm blocking, let me know. I can do that at times. Any? Questions?
Comments? Go ahead. Yes. Oh,
Thank
thank you. Oh, that's the first time we actually doing together,
Yeah.
as you can tell.
We work together and we do a lot of things together at work, but this is our first conference together. And even last night, we walked through it for the first time, start to finish last
And
night.
we didn't have a space for it, so we actually were doing it on a trunk, like we put the laptop on a trunk outside and we're practicing. So thank you.
Hey, Leland and Natalia, we have a question in the Zoom.
Mhm. So my advice on that one, the times I've done that is we look at that whole lead time, right? From the time we get a request to the time it goes out. And I will, I do a lot of metrics driven. So I tend to go to the metrics first. And the same way, looking at the flow and find those areas that are where delays happen. And if you can translate delays into cost, right? What is this costing me for the delay? You get people's attention when you start talking cost. And so the big one that I had with that one, it was actually the same company where the pitcher just was in a different division of all the dependencies. The delay that they had from when software was finished to when it was deployed was over 90 days. So code was sitting there, but they waited to bundle it up so much before they deployed that 90 days later, on average, it went out. And so we were able to talk about the cost of that and what is that cost of delay.
So Leland covered the metric side of it. What I would say is from the culture perspective, we also use a lot of working agreements. So if you working with somebody that you can't really influence, you can come up with some of the rules that you both will follow, right? Okay, maybe once a month we'll review the metrics and see how we're progressing. And if you're going to bring the numbers into conversation, that's usually very impactful. So they will be willing to at least meet you somewhere and create some common rules that you will both adhere to.
So just real quick and here, there's a flow review. There's a slide. It'll be in the deck where you can download it, but this is a flow review. And so looking at that and looking at how the things, we're reviewing, how did things flow? How did it get out to customers?
One of the tools that we're using.
One of the tools that we
Yeah.
use, yeah.
I think there were 2 more questions, then we have one online.
Yes.
Are you ready for the online question?
NPS score, so Net Promoter Score, is the key one for us, internally and externally also.
One more internal, one more here. We have one more.
I think there was one more on the
Yeah,
back.
Nigel has
Oh,
one.
go ahead. Oh, you're gonna give him a hard time.
He wants to give me a hard time. We've worked
Go ahead.
together at 2 different places, so yeah.
So I know you were talking about, do you have any experience with that?
So actually I do. One of the divisions that I was working with was editorial group. They had nothing to do with the technology. And I did exactly this because everything that I knew before didn't work for them. They didn't care about Scrum. They didn't care about ceremonies. They couldn't do daily stand-up. They wanted it to have it once 2 weeks because the way that they were working. So exactly the same way, but just how you're going to implement it, meaning some of the techniques you're going to use, they may be customized a little bit, but the approach and what we were sharing will be the same.
Yeah, I only have one experience, and it was with an HR recruiting group. So from the time the manager posted a job rec to the time that they were seeing resumes was a very long time. And so how could we smooth that process out? And it was same way, it was more about the measuring flow and let them see it and make it visible and say, here's where the blockers are.
So we do have one. So in your recommendations, what is the most effective way to do that?
The answer is it depends. And the answer is it depends because depends who you're working with. So pretty much you need to identify first, what I would recommend is identify the key people that you need to gather the feedback from or the key teams that you need to get the feedback from. And then identify, again, working agreement. How do I get feedback from you? What is the most valuable or easier way for you to provide me feedback that will have impact on my results? Any other Well, go ahead. We have a guest here. Go ahead. Yes.
Yes.
I'll need to ask him because I messed up a little bit, so.
Yes.
Of course.
We like y'all to hear the different accents, right?
Anything else? Oh, go ahead.
Mhm. So that's man, we're running over, but that's okay. That's still a problem. And I think that's the kind of why we had to start with culture first. And you have to start with the leadership team first, because a lot of times it's the leaders who have that ownership. And they need to know that it's a collective, like we're trying to do this all together, right? Go back to the extreme programming, collective code ownership was one of their values, right? Principles. And so trying to move that direction more, but it will start with the leaders and building that leader first team. And so that's where I try to start, is get the leaders first, and and they start acting like a scrum team, and they're all in it together. They're not the UI person and then the APIs and then the database. And how are we doing this as a whole team? But you're going to have to start there to be able to do that, or at least my experience. But that's a hard one because, if you were a back-end developer and that's what you do really well, you don't want to do UI work, right? And I'm telling my past, right? So I didn't want to do UI development. I'm colorblind. You don't want me doing it anyway. So it doesn't look good. But you get in those areas and you don't want to give up that. And so where I mentioned that with travelers, that's how we broke it with travelers. They were the ones who had that knowledge. They would go in the teams and share it with others until they got comfortable that I can hand this code off to someone else. But the leaders had to agree first.
Okay, I think we're out of time. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for attending. Really humbled to be here.